So occasionally find a video where the title is just so good that I'm like, I need to make a video on this. And normally I watch maybe the first 30 seconds of the video so I can do an intro and give you guys what like the general idea of this one is going to be. But this time we're going in blind. I'm just as blind as you are. And in fact, I have a guess what this is about. I'm guessing this is about Titanfall. Or sorry, Titanfall 3, aka Titanfall Extraction Shooters, aka layoffs at EA, but I'm not sure. So the title was, and what made me click it is, this is EA Nightmare Scenario. Let's find out what that is.
Well, everyone, it's happened again. We've got another massive round of layoffs in the games industry.
I got it.
But, well, suffice to say, this one is going to teach us a lot. The biggest headline is that Respawn right now are suffering, and they're suffering.
You're not going to believe me that I didn't watch the first 30 seconds. I swear to God I did not. But yeah.
For EA's failures. They've taken the brunt of the latest round of layoffs, 100 staff are gone, 2 projects are cancelled, and I'm sad to say that a third Titanfall game was being tested, but now it's dead. Though,
so from what I understand, the 2 games that were cancelled were the Extraction shooter set in the Titanfall universe and actually Titanfall 3 itself, but I could be wrong about that one.
Rumors did say it was an extraction shooter because, hey, it is modern era. Anyway, it's easy to look at this and to point at Apex's recently botched monetization and all the player distrust as the primary reason, and I'm sure that all plays a role, but it's far from the main role, and a lot of people would look at, say, Veilguard. But for all of the chatter that Veilguard's underperformance generated, it is but a drop in the ocean. Seriously. Today, we're going to learn why public companies suck with just about the perfect working example, and, well, it's grim, it's spicy. I hope you enjoy. Now, I don't know about you, but
he brought me in. I'm ready.
Sitting. I had been hunting for a chair to replace my busted old IKEA Marcus, and that is where the C7 Max from today's sponsor, FlexiSpot, came in, because
it's not awesome. The same one, but it's from FlexiSpot.
The latex and memory foam seats stay.
I want one of those ones. I should message them.
Hours, and the adjustable backrest means lumbar support that actually fits your spine, not like some weird average person's spine. Which,
although for backwards hats, the headrest doesn't work well.
The seat depth is customizable. You've got 5D armrests that literally just adjust in any direction, and even the headrest can be tilted to get the perfect angle for working or for reading. It's perfect in office mode, but when it's time to chill, it will recline back to 135 degrees. You can kick out the footrest and just chill. So basically, right, whether it's editing, gaming, or just taking a break, this fits every posture comfortably, and that's why I love it. I especially love this. You get a 30-day risk-free trial. You get a 10-year warranty with direct replacement.
I will tell you right now, I'm going to skip the ad, but I'm going to help him. This chair, the reason why I got it is because my office gets incredibly hot, and on other chairs, my butt would sweat so much it was horrible. This one is actually breathable, and that was the most important thing to me. Anyway,
it's an absolute value king. FlexiSpot last quarter did not go well. Now, as we covered in the channel, Dragon Age underperformed, right? It totally did. BioWare was then gutted of all but a skeleton crew while they worked on the next Mass Effect game. But the real story was elsewhere. EA's yearly revenue forecast dropped from $7.5 billion to $7 billion, and that was driven by their worst-case nightmare. Madden, college football, and EA Sports FC all underperformed. And that truly is a disaster. With that announcement, investors decided to take their money elsewhere. EA's market value fell by a cool $6 billion, and while the stock price later increased, it did not reach last year's highs. So, EA looked weak. What EA needed was a win, and they actually got one in the form of Split Fiction. But here's the thing, right? Split Fiction's success barely scratches the surface, and that's why EA needed, from their perspective anyway, to take out the cleaver. Here's the damage. 300 to 400 staff are being cut.
So where are they trying to make this money up? I don't know if he's going to talk about this, but where are they trying to make that money up? It's going to be in live service crap like everyone else is doing. But specifically, I think all the eggs are in Battlefield's basket.
100 of which are at Respawn. And Respawn said that these are targeted team adjustments. I'm not going to bother repeating the rest of their statement here because it's mostly just ghoulish corporate speak that essentially says nothing. Now, what we can gather online is that both Apex Legends and the Jedi teams have been hit. And the core idea here, right, is that Respawn needs to focus, that they have got to do more with less. And that means the next Jedi game needs to raise the bar while staff on it are laid off. And if Jedi Survivor's launch taught us anything, it's that raising the bar is kind of hard and can just make your game break. Apex.
Okay, unpopular opinion here. After playing Expedition 33, the layoffs start to make sense to me. That game was made by 40 people, less than 40 people, between 30 and 40. In, I think, 5 years. I could be wrong about that number, but I think it's less than 5 years. So we'll just say maximum 5 years. And the game is incredible. Like, so good. A 30-hour long campaign, essentially, plus bonus content at the end. And that was made by 40 people. So to see these companies that come out with a game like this, and they're like 500 people or 300 people or whatever, 100 people strong, or thousands sometimes, and it takes them 4 years to put out garbage, I can see why higher ups would start to be mad. I see why the narrative of a game like Expedition 33 coming out of Sandfall is going to be a problem for these studios, because now the execs do not have the excuse to be like, oh, well, we didn't give them enough time. Oh, we didn't have enough staff. It's clearly possible. And yes, certain games are more difficult, especially online games with all of the extra work that needs to go into networking. But still, I think you can see where the narrative and the problem actually becomes there.
Space is the same as well, by the way. So somehow they've got to make Apex go up, even though they've just taken hits. But the real hit is actually to Respawn's future. So 2 in-development projects are cancelled here. One of them was Titanfall, okay? And I know, Titanfall 3 is something we all want, but per Jeff Grubb's sources, it actually wasn't Titanfall 3. It was a incubation project, a true incubation project. So not something that was greenlit, but it was overseen by Steve Fukuda. And now Steve is kind of relevant here. He's a fairly big name.
So that's something they do not often talk about. This was, in other words, this was super, super early on, but that also doesn't line up with the amount of people that got laid off there, right? If they had an ungreenlit project that they were just like working on behind the scenes, is not one of their main things, not something they sold to investors, and nothing along those lines, getting 100 people from your company laid off from canceling a passion project sounds a little bit false.
Directed Titanfall, so you'd expect him to be the kind of guy working on the big new thing. And what they were doing was exploring new gameplay systems, new ideas, and Bloomberg then suggested that it was an extraction-based game. So who knows, maybe there's a universe where Marathon Hyenas and Titanfall the extraction game were all fighting with each other. Ouch. And look, I imagine they were trying to cook in some way, but right now we just don't know much about the game. Regardless though, it's dead, and it's not really unexpected, right? Prototype style.
3 years, two years from now, we'll hear about what that game actually was.
All the time, this was not a full greenlit production. It wasn't a whole new story game. It was a test, I suppose, of using the Titanfall IP so that it could exist. They could do something with it. Now, there is another dead project. Sadly, we have no idea what that is. If you do know what it is, well...
Okay, so there's your answer then. I thought it was like another Titanfall project that was not the extraction shooter, but I could be wrong.
You know that we have a tips email address, and you can send an email there. I'd be very happy to read it. But there's actually quite a bit more to these layoffs. Even just by the numbers, the ones impacting Respawn are but a fraction of the total. One question: how short notice are these layoffs? It's a fun one because Apex Legends actually revealed a new hero 1 day before the layoff. The hero didn't even come out. It was announced, and then bam, the person.
I heard about this.
So far, we've seen level designers, dialogue editors, QA, and more be impacted, but that's just within Respawn. Remember, there are only 100 of the 300 to 400 total, and the wider layoffs seem particularly player-facing, so stuff you'll notice. IGN is reporting that the customer experience team, the marketing team, and other support roles are the remainder of the bottom estimate.
So what I would want to know here is, after Oblivion got revealed, revealed and launched, how many companies went, guess we don't need a marketing team, we can just shadow drop things and people will love. I wonder how many marketing teams actually had that conversation.
200 people who are being impacted here. Now, it is said that they'll be given an opportunity to apply for other roles in the company, but let's be real for a second. If you are multilingual customer support, are you really going to get rehired when EA could they think anyway,
AI?
just as easily outsource or replace with an LLM. And look, this is not me being a Luddite, right? Saying that, oh, we should decrease innovation to maximize labor. I'm not saying that. I mean, look, for fuck's sake, I'm a lifelong science fiction fan and generally an optimist. But here's why I don't see the LLM stuff as a panacea in instances like this. Number one, they're early. We've all had experiences of bad customer support chatbots. Number two, and most importantly, they're being done fast and for the wrong reason. They're not being done as a way to use new technology to make for a better customer experience. It's all about, well, cost. And in this case, it's not cost in a vacuum. Oh no. This is cost in the context of bad quarterly earnings. And, well, we really do know it's hasty. If that thing about the Apex writer is just a little anecdote, what makes it abundantly clear is exactly how screwed Electronic Arts is. EA are off the back of weak earnings, and their next earnings call is on the 6th of May. Now, it's going to cover...
So this video is probably coming out on the 5th. We might have another video talking about this on the 6th or 7th then, because if their earnings call comes out, there's a reason why these layoffs are happening. So that could be a really, really bad thing for them.
Fiscal year 2025. And in it, Andrew Wilson and his executive team are going to tell investment groups all about the company's year and whether they've
probably a bit
met
about
their
Battlefield.
already reduced targets. And that begs a question. Will they? Well, in quarter 3, bookings were down across all platforms and game types. EA predicted low double-digit growth in global football, and for just this quarter, they expected declines of 13 to 4% across all fields year over year. And that's even with Split Fiction being a massive success. But remember, May the 6th has not happened yet, but these layoffs have just happened. Now, the May 6th report is not just for Q4, it's for the entire year. And in it, they'll have to give guidance for the next year. EA cannot scrape by here.
Yeah, so that's where we're going to get some... So this is what's interesting about when Summer Games Fest is, right? Because essentially it's right after these Q4 earnings calls for all of these companies. So Take-Two's is on the 15th. EA's is on the 6th. We'll probably should have an Activision one coming pretty soon, but I don't know how that works with Xbox now. And then right after that, they get into the reveals for the next year and like the December, November, October timeframe, which is the biggest time of the year for video games. So yeah, this month, that's what we'll get. Earnings calls, then Summer Games Fest, and then the launch of everything for the rest of the year. That's like kind of what you have to look forward to.
We need to put on a show of financial prudence to please investors. Customer experience is the sort of thing that does not make direct, instant profits. Incubation projects are money pits that don't have guaranteed returns. So they're the things that are easy cuts on a balance sheet. Apex isn't trending up, so its team size is trending down. That can make financial sense. In one sense, not exactly one that knows much about games, them being good and what causes them to grow, but, you know, in the business management sense. Now this is all quite grim. What if I told you that it's actually even worse? Okay, so EA's next 12 months is set to include Battlefield, with a rumored free-to-play component, as well as the free-to-play Skate game. Then there's The Sims, which is continuing its business.
Okay, there's clearly something I didn't. Free-to-play Skate game? I know they're working on a Skate game. They're working on a free-to-play Skate game? Is that something that I should know? What?
Model shift, but really what I'm here to tell you is that none of that stuff particularly matters. At least none of it matters as much as sports, and sports are in more trouble than most people realize. So first off, the Madden series is finally dropping the PS4 and the Xbox One. Now EA's big hope here is that audiences will shift over to the new consoles. And here's the thing, the
console prices just rose everywhere for PlayStation and Xbox, which means those old gen consoles, people are going to be sticking with them for longer because they can't afford a new console.
Channel appeals to enthusiasts. So the idea of like you or me, I don't know, using an ancient console at under 30 FPS, that might be absolute insane heresy. But the reality is the PS4 is still fairly huge. PS5 has only just surpassed its sales curve, and that's with the Xbox series performing worse than the Xbox One, like set of consoles. And that does show stagnation. So right now, there's about 120 million lifetime sale PS4s and about 75 million PS5s. There are tens of millions who have not switched, and if any group was to not make a console upgrade, I'd say it's probably the more casual sports audience.
That's actually a really
But
good
then
point.
There's EA Sports FC, formerly known as FIFA. It was already facing microtransaction slowdowns. If it also drops last-gen support, I think that would certainly hurt. I have to wonder if losing the FIFA name recognition would hurt it in the most casual audiences. And the thing is, that's just the 2 established sports games. The next college football game went up for pre-orders recently, which probably is good for money, but college football, its initial release, was astoundingly powerful. It sold so many goddamn copies.
So this is what I was talking about before. The NCAA game is what I called it, but the college football game, I thought this did insanely well, almost #1 game of the year. I think it might have been #2 behind Call of Duty. I could be wrong there, but
Basically propped up game industry stats. It sold that well. But that's because it was new. People had not had college football in that way before. So will just another entry, will that really outpace the sales of College Football 25? I would bet no. And in a way, this all speaks to a deep systemic issue. You and I likely look at this and think, okay, so clearly you need your products to do better, and your response has been to pull resources away from the ones that work. Well, that's actually the thing. There's a reason why EA would do this, and it's simple. They're incentivized to do so. EA is judged on both profit and growth. So if you want a stock to go up fast, well,
this actually makes a lot of sense. I was questioning why he was saying this for a second, because it's a good point. If you have successful IPs, Apex Legends, why would you pull your resources away from those successful things? And it's not because they're not successful and they're not making money, it's because they're not growing, right? That's why Call of Duty is such a cash cow, is because not only do they make a ton of money, the growth also happens with it constantly because there's a new game every year. And really, it's the only series that has a new game every year outside of a sports game. And let's be honest, I always dump on Call of Duty, but they make a lot more changes per year to their game than any sports game does, or any other game that comes out year after year. It's just the way that it is.
Convince the market that it's a growth stock. And what's most frustrating here, and makes it all make sense, is that sports is not paying the price for the failures of sports. And that is in spite of the company literally being restructured to stop sports from carrying everyone else. When we last talked about EA, we used the metaphor of pillars holding the company up. You've got games like The Sims, Apex Legends, and then you've got the sports titles. And that's not really just a metaphor, because EA is actually 2 pillars, quite literally its company structure. There's EA Entertainment, which includes Apex, The Sims, Battlefield, Star Wars, and others, and then you've got EA Sports, which is all the sports. Now, this corporate split was meant to drive growth, the idea basically being that both companies could flourish on their own without, to put it simply, the vibes and incentives and time.
So I'm assuming... No, it's 100%. I was thinking for a second. Battlefield is 1000% an EA Entertainment game, whereas all of the sports games fall under EA Sports. Why they have it separated, I don't fully understand. Maybe he explains that.
Of one toppling the other. Now,
If one
did
fails,
it
they
also
both
mean
don't?
that entertainment could no longer hide their significantly less profitable single-player games under the profit margins of sports? Yes, it did. But in theory, anyway, it meant that each group could stand on its own. However, reality is not bearing that theory out, and this is what really sucks. The pillars are actually toppling each other. So yes, Apex is weak, but it's sports that's got the market scared. It's sports that's having the major financial impact. And look, understandably so. Sports is the money-making machine here, the absurd one. With those games, EA had an unimpeachable business model that lasted decades and literally made them one of the biggest players in the industry. I mean, right now, they basically get to run a series of gacha games with progress being reset every year that are bought for full price.
That is very true.
That's mad. Yeah, any bad news there is going to sting. Any sign of weakness
that's a really good point, and that's essentially how Call of Duty has been run too. But Call of Duty community has been strong enough and fought against it enough where those gacha mechanics have been brought back a little bit, and even to the point where the game is now on Game Pass, the Battle Royale is free to play, and they've gone back on a lot of those things. And yes, I still think based off of the model that they have right now, and there was an announcement today about them changing the Battle Pass and making it so that there was game modes that are only available for Battle Pass owners, which they better not do that because we'll fight against it. But these games have not. These games like FIFA or what EA FC, whatever they call them now, have basically just kept the same gotcha thing while charging full price the entire time. So it's no wonder people are sick of it, right?
Therefore is existential to the company's story. And sadly, we're seeing that sports is not paying the price for its failure. Because sure, Apex is down, and if it's down, cut the team, whatever. You and I, right, we might scream about short-sightedness, but you could at least see a logic there. What's telling is that logic has not been applied to sports. Sports is the major downturn, and at least from what we can see, per developers and etc., it's not sports that's taking the hit. It's EA Entertainment and EA's customer service and marketing that are taking the hit. And unlike with, say, the whole, Vince Zampella-led fixing of Battlefield, it seems that EA does not have a big public plan to buttress sports, and that could have dire consequences.
Did they not learn anything from like Rocket League, where like maybe sports games don't just have to be sports games? Like we can make them a little bit more interesting. And the creators of Sifu are making the football game or soccer game. I want to call it FIFU, but that's not what it is. But they're making that game, and I believe they did an early playtest for that, and it had like over 100,000 concurrent players in the early playtest. So like maybe they need to look into like sports not being so serious.
If there's anything that reeks of desperation, it's this. Companies being fast and loose with business models in a way that pisses off players. We saw them do that with Apex Legends, and we're actually seeing that happen to the sports games. EA just introduced its
And this is why you shouldn't pre-order Battlefield.
first paid battle pass for EA Sports FC Ultimate Team. Lovely. And it's hard to read that decision as anything other than the panicked introduction of new monetization to cover a shortfall that we literally know exists because they reported it in their financials. Now, for that audience, I'd say it would likely work in the short term. That could give a last, moment to bump up the revenue for a game that will help EA cross the financial line next week in their earnings call and will maybe help their future predictions. But what it very much seems to be is a reaction, not a plan. I think the timing makes that obvious. And we've got to ask, when that model starts to dip in revenue, what will come next? Do we get Black Cell style passes? Do we get something like that? I don't.
That's Call of Duty. I know that one well. I think what's going to end up happening with Black Cell is they're going to increase the cost of it and then include the premium events in the Battle Pass, which I do like that system better, but at the same time, give me better events then.
Don't know, but it does seem like a weird race to the bottom of just desperation. None of this seems to be sustainable. And that's because EA's plan was to coast on their sports games forever. They're not opposed to making interesting games, good games, narrative games. Every year, EA do throw a bone out to that world. This year it was Split Fiction, which was fantastic. Next year, well, there's a single-player Star Wars strategy game called Zero Company. I wouldn't have seen EA do something like that, which is neat. And look, you've got Battlefield, you've got Skate. If those work, well, that will help out Apex. But if the sports games are not making the money they need to, and EA doesn't have a way to fix that, everyone is going to suffer. And this story today is a prime example of that, of how the quarterly incentives of a public company are not in the best interest of players, and of course I would even argue of their own shareholders in the long term. And if you
I think that's the biggest thing is like if you look at someone's plan and you're like, okay, this isn't good for the players, wait, it's also not good for the investors. Okay, who is it? They just don't know what they're doing.
Want another story along those lines? Watch this video next, because Discord seems to be about to go public.
That's interesting. But yes, EA has been having this problem ever since they worked on this model with their sports games. And you could see it. You could see the towers falling. You could see the bridges burning. And they just didn't really seem to listen to anyone. They were just like, this is making $7 billion a year. And we're going to just pretend like it's always going to make that much. But now things are starting to fall. And I think they will continue to. And that's what worries me about Battlefield, because it's the same thing with Activision. If they can pinch any more pennies out of the pockets of their consumers, they're going to.